The black man in a wheelchair stopped by the police. No one knows he was the on-duty emergency doctor that night. You'd think a man in a wheelchair wearing hospital scrubs wouldn't be considered a threat. But apparently, being black cancels out all other identities, even if you're rolling out of the ER you just saved lives in. Dr. Lennox Morgan was used to exhaustion. He wasn't used to being surrounded by flashing lights, guns drawn, while his wheelchair was blocked in the middle of a Walgreens parking lot. 10 minutes earlier, he'd finished a grueling 16-hour trauma shift at Midtown General. His last patient was a 5-year-old with a collapsed lung and a mother who cried thank you through tears and blood. Lennox had smiled softly, rolled back into the staff locker room, and changed into dry scrubs. He had one stop to make before heading home. Almond milk for his partner. That was it. But when he came out of the store and began loading the bag onto the tray attached to his wheelchair, a police cruiser screeched to a halt in front of him. Then another. The floodlights came next. Then the commands. "Keep your hands where I can see them," an officer barked. Lennox blinked, startled, holding up the small plastic bag. "Is there a problem?" he asked calmly. He'd been taught long ago not to raise his voice. Not to make sudden moves. Not to ask why. But the moment he asked that simple question, the younger cop stepped forward, one hand hovering over his weapon. Someone called in a suspicious man loitering near a vehicle. "We're checking it out." "I work at Midtown General," Lennox said, pointing toward the ID clipped to his waistband. "I just finished a shift. I'm heading home." "Don't move," the cop snapped. "We'll check your story." Another officer moved behind him and began patting down his backpack, pulling out his wallet without asking. The cop read the name, paused, and squinted at Lennox. "Dr. Lennox Morgan?" Lennox nodded. "Yeah. That's me." "You're a doctor," the first cop said, his voice skeptical, even annoyed. "You don't look like one." Lennox felt something burn in his throat. He was used to that tone. It didn't matter how many degrees he had. To men like them, he was always something else first. A risk. A profile. A box on a training video they probably skipped. He tried to speak again, but a third cop, this one older, built like a retired linebacker, cut him off. "Sir, what happened to your legs?" "Paralysis. Accident. 18 years ago," Lennox said, keeping his voice level. "This is my car." He gestured to the modified sedan parked beside him. "The license is in the backpack." The cop nodded, stepping back, finally giving him some space. But Lennox could still feel a shame of having to explain his own existence, to justify his right to be in a parking lot, to buy almond milk, to breathe. The crowd had started to gather by then. A woman recording from her phone across the lot. A white man in a Patagonia vest whispering to his wife. Nobody said anything aloud. But Lennox knew how quickly these things could go wrong. He knew the names. Knew the footage. Knew how many times someone said he was reaching after someone like him ended up on the ground. The tension broke when a dispatch call finally came through. No record. No threat. A verified hospital ID. The sergeant exhaled and motioned to the others. "He checks out. Let's clear it." No apology. Not even a glance. Just dispersal, like they hadn't just made him feel like prey. Lennox sat in the silence, bag in hand, trembling from the adrenaline spike that came too late. He looked down at the almond milk and almost laughed. This wasn't even the worst part of his week. The worst part was that it didn't surprise him. Not anymore. Not after years of being the only black doctor in his class. Not after being asked to fetch water for a white attending during rounds. Not after patients asked when the real doctor would arrive. He returned home to a quiet apartment and sank into the couch. His partner, Jonah, was asleep in the other room. The city lights filtered in through the blinds, soft and blue. Lennox stared at them, letting his breath steady. Then he pulled out his phone, opened the Note app, and began to type. It wasn't the first time he'd written about racism in medicine. But this time, it wasn't about the hospital. It was about the parking lot. About what it meant to be both a healer and a suspect. About what it felt like to save a child's life at 3 a.m. and get treated like a criminal by 4. The post went live at 2:47 a.m. By the time the sun came up, it had been shared 12,000 times. The video from the bystander had gone viral. People were tagging the police department, the hospital, national news outlets. Lennox hadn't expected it to matter. But it did. Suddenly, he was the face of something much larger. And the backlash came too. Trolls in his inbox. Thinly veiled threats. A blue-check account accusing him of lying for attention. But what mattered most came in a message from a nursing student in Alabama. "I want to be a trauma doctor," she wrote. "And I'm scared. But you made me believe it's possible." Lennox reread that message 3 times. And in that moment, he didn't feel tired. He felt seen. This was only the beginning. The next few days unfolded like a storm Lennox hadn't planned for. His hospital administrator called him into an emergency meeting. The room was tense with that overly polite tone white institutions used when they felt exposed. "Dr. Morgan, we support your right to speak," said Dr. Carolson, the chief medical officer, "but we would have appreciated a heads up." Lennox leaned back in his wheelchair and locked eyes with him. "Did I need to schedule an appointment to describe getting stopped at gunpoint on my day off?" There was silence. Lennox didn't fill it. Carolson sighed. "You understand the hospital's name is being associated with social media commentary." "The commentary was reality," Lennox said. "And I wore your hospital's badge while 4 officers surrounded me like I was holding a weapon, not a grocery bag." Another silence. "Then, you're a brilliant doctor, Lennox. But please remember, there are optics." Lennox stood figuratively. He knew this language. He'd heard it when he protested the lack of black residents. Heard it when he'd been passed over for department head despite higher scores. He rolled out of that office with his spine straighter than ever. That night, Jonah sat beside him as they watched the local news play the clip again. This time, they'd added a cheerin', "Doctor or danger?" Wheelchair stop sparks outrage. "You look tired," Jonah said gently. "You sure you want to keep doing interviews?" Lennox shook his head. "I'm not doing it for the press. I'm doing it for the kids watching who think this is just how it has to be." The next morning, he got a letter. Certified envelope. No return address. Inside was a printed photo of him leaving the hospital, circled in red ink. The message read, "Stay in your place." Lennox stared at it for a long time, then slid it into a folder with the other letters he'd collected over the years. Anonymous notes. Hate mail. Every one a reminder of how dangerous truth-telling could be when it came from someone like him. But something shifted when the city's police commissioner reached out. They met in a neutral building, no cameras. Lennox, calm. Commissioner Halverson, sweaty behind his tie. "We want to apologize," he said. "We're reviewing the stop. And well, we'd like your input on our bias training reforms." Lennox didn't flinch. "You want me to teach the men who pointed guns at me how not to do it again? We think your perspective would help." "My perspective got me humiliated in a Walgreens parking lot." Halverson looked at the table. "The department's under pressure. This could be good for both of us." "No," Lennox said. "It could be good for them. For the next man in a wheelchair. For the next black kid in scrubs. I don't care if it's good for me." He paused, then added, "But I'll do it. If you guarantee I'm not the token. I want real power in that training design. I want to bring in experts who look like the people most affected." The commissioner agreed. Barely. But it was a start. Over the next month, Lennox's schedule doubled. Half his time in the ER. The other half working with a team of equity consultants, psychologists, and retired civil rights advocates to overhaul the department's training. He spoke to cops who rolled their eyes. He faced a room where someone muttered affirmative action under their breath. But he also met one young officer who said, "I didn't know you could be a doctor in a chair." Lennox answered, "You can be a doctor in a chair, in a hoodie, in a hijab, with an accent. Doesn't make you less human. Remember that next time you reach for your weapon." At night, he came home with aching shoulders and a heart full of fire. The hate hadn't stopped. But something else had started momentum. He was invited to speak at a national medical equity conference. He stood on stage, a black man in a wheelchair, and told a story most tried to ignore. He ended with this: "My paralysis didn't keep me from saving lives. But this system almost did. We don't need more apologies. We need transformation." The applause lasted 3 full minutes. Afterward, a young girl, no older than 10, came up to him. Brown skin. Braided hair. "My brother's in a wheelchair," she said. "And I want to be a doctor like you." Lennox knelt slightly to her level. "Then you be one. And don't let anyone tell you your body limits your brilliance." When he returned to his hospital, things had shifted. The staff greeted him differently. Some with respect. Others with discomfort. But they knew who he was now. Not just the black doctor in room 3B. But the one who made the city listen. Then, one morning, something happened that rattled him deeper than all the threats. A man arrived in the ear-white, 50s, gut wound. Lennox jumped in with his team. They stopped the bleeding. Stabilized him. When the man regained consciousness, he looked into Lennox's face and went pale. "You're that doctor," he whispered. "The one from the news. The one in the chair." "Yes," Lennox said, checking vitals. "You saved me?" "Yes." The man swallowed hard. "I'm a cop. Retired. One of the guys who trained the rookies. I saw that video. And I said nothing." Lennox said nothing at first. "Then, you're awake now. That's something. Keep using it." The man blinked, and for a moment, Lennox saw something break in him. Not pain. Not guilt. Recognition. Later that night, Lennox sat on his balcony, almond milk beside him, stars above. Jonah stepped out and wrapped an arm around his shoulder. "Do you think it'll ever really change?" he asked. Lennox looked out at the skyline. "It already is. One reckoning at a time." He wasn't naive. He knew the fight was far from over. But he also knew this: they couldn't silence him anymore. Because he was the one they didn't see coming. The one they tried to reduce to a label, a mistake, a profile. But he was a healer. A fighter. A symbol. And now, finally, the world was listening. 2 months later, Lennox sat at the front of a packed city auditorium. A banner hung above the stage, Community Accountability Forum. He wasn't there as a guest anymore. He was a featured speaker. A leader. A force. Cameras lined the back. Police, nurses, citizens, students, even a few skeptics filled the chairs. Some crossed their arms when he rolled out on stage. But he didn't care. He didn't need everyone to approve, only to listen. "They told me to stay quiet," Lennox began, voice clear. "That going public would cost me friends, opportunities, maybe even my job. But I didn't go public. I lived it. I was pulled out of my car because my skin and my chair made me look like a threat. And if you're more disturbed by my words than the actions that led to them, then you're part of the reason why it keeps happening." He paused. The room was still. "I don't need your sympathy. I need your courage. Speak up when it's hard. especially when it's uncomfortable. After the forum, people lined up. Some to shake his hand. Others just to say thank you. One woman, a white nurse, hugged him tightly and whispered, "You helped my son understand what he couldn't hear from me." But the real moment came 2 weeks later, in the most unexpected place. Lennox was on a hospital rotation, checking on patients. A young black boy, maybe 8 or 9, was being wheeled in with a fractured leg. His face was tight with fear. Lennox rolled up beside him and smiled gently. "Hey, I'm Dr. Morgan. I've got wheels too. We'll get you fixed up." The boy's mother gasped. "Oh my God. I know you. From the video. You're the doctor." Lennox nodded. The boy's eyes lit up. "You're the wheelchair doctor who told the cops off?" He chuckled. "Well, I told them the truth. That counts more." The boy grinned. That smile stayed with Lennox for days. Not because of admiration, but because it showed what hope looked like. Because that boy would grow up knowing someone who looked like him had stood up, rolled forward, and refused to disappear. Meanwhile, the police department's training program finally launched with Lennox as a lead consultant. It was controversial. Some unions pushed back. Some officers quit. But new recruits learned from him directly. He rolled into classrooms, showed them body cam footage, asked them hard questions, and never let them squirm away from responsibility. One cadet, a Latina woman, came up to him after class and said, "You changed why I want to wear this badge." That was worth more than a headline. More than a viral clip. The work was happening. Slowly. Quietly. Powerfully. One morning, Lennox was sipping coffee at his window when he got a call. It was the mayor. Not a staffer. Not an assistant. The mayor herself. "Dr. Morgan," she said, "we'd like to honor you at the city's annual Civil Rights Gala. It's long overdue." Lennox hesitated. "I'm not interested in being a symbol. I want systemic change." "And you're part of that," she said. "You've redefined what accountability looks like. Please. It matters." He agreed, under one condition: the gala would feature youth speakers from underserved neighborhoods. No politics. No sanitized speeches. Just truth. The night of the gala arrived. Lennox wore a sharp gray suit. Jonah straightened his tie. The ballroom was lavish, the air thick with politics and promises. But when Lennox rolled up to the mic, he stripped it all down. "I was never supposed to make it to this stage. I wasn't even supposed to survive that parking lot stop. But here I am. Not because of resilience. But because I refused to shrink." He scanned the crowd. "I'm not just a black man in a wheelchair. I'm not just a doctor. I'm proof that our systems fail quietly until someone makes noise. And I won't stop making noise." A standing ovation followed. But more importantly, the stories didn't stop with him. Other hospital workers began speaking out. Other patients shared videos. Teachers, delivery drivers, students, everyday Black Americans started submitting their own experiences to a digital archive Lennox helped create, called the Human Diagnosis Project. Truth became a movement. A week later, Lennox returned to the same Walgreens. This time, not for groceries. He had a meeting with the regional store manager to discuss community training for employees. As he rolled through the parking lot, a woman behind him said, "Hey, are you that doctor?" He turned. A white woman, maybe early 60s, cautious but sincere. "My grandson watches your speeches. He asked me what systemic racism means." I didn't have an answer. But now we talk about it. Because of you. He smiled. Keep talking. That's how it changes. Inside, the store was different too. The new staff greeted him with respect. The security guard, a young black man, nodded with recognition. "We're glad you came back," he said. "You changed a lot more than just this store." That night, Jonah surprised him with a gift. A framed newspaper front page, the headline reading, "City's first Disability Equity Council launches under Dr. Lennox Morgan." Underneath was a photo of Lennox in his chair, arms crossed, fire in his eyes. "You made this happen," Jonah said. "No," Lennox replied. "We made it happen. Every person who refused to look away made it happen." In the months that followed, Lennox's name appeared in textbooks, civil rights documentaries, even a mural downtown. But that was never the point. The point was this: on the night he was pulled over, they saw a black man in a wheelchair and assumed weakness. But what they didn't see, what they couldn't understand, was that inside that chair was a hurricane of purpose. Of fire. Of intellect sharpened by injustice. He wasn't just surviving. He was rewriting the story. And for every kid in a chair, for every man with brown skin and tired eyes, for every mother praying her son gets home alive, he was proof that dignity cannot be profiled. Because that night may have started with flashing lights and fear. But it ended with a legacy. A legacy that kept moving forward. Wheel by wheel. Word by word. And no one, not even the badge, could stop it.